Now we take off. Now typically when you fly over there, you try to gain some altitude and you go on your way. Well, that time we found a flight plan. Instead of going from Biscayne Bay Omni over to Nassau, we decided to go via Andros Island, which has got an Omni on it. It's a directional device. And we were going to fly down there and then go up here. And the other thing, as fate would have it, there was a 3,000-foot cloud cover. So we're down below 3,000. So now we're about halfway out, and we're just south of Bimini. And the engine quits. And Horn, who was hung over and asleep in the back seat, says, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, you idiot, what do you think? The engine quit." He said, "Well, start it." And I said, "Sure, what's on?" So now I'm switching fuel tanks, I'm hitting the electric boost. And by the way, when you read about John Denver's crash, there'll be a lot of reminiscence here. So at any rate, nothing's happening. And then interestingly enough, I pull the power back and it fires. And then I push it in and it doesn't. Well, I find out after the fact that on this airplane there are 2 fuel injection systems. One for taxiing, and then when you do full power, you're going to fly. So anyway, that wasn't working out. So the wind was out of the southwest, and that's the way the Gulf Stream comes. So I turned towards into the wind. I put down 40 degrees of flaps. And I find out later that Jimmy had opened, these are big aluminum doors, and he had opened the one and put the life raft packet in, and then the one on this side he put the Wall Street Journal in. And I pushed my seat back as far as it would go. Now, there were no chest straps in those days, so I could just barely, feel the wheel. And so I'm making this landing. And I know that I just would like to make a nice, reasonable approach. And I'm convinced, I spent quite a time as a boxer, which teaches you a lot of discipline, and as a trial lawyer, it teaches you more discipline. So that saved my life. And I'm going down. Oh, and also, as I said in the book, I'm saying, they're not going to get me. And I never figured out who they were. That was interesting. So I'm going down saying that, and I'm setting up this control-rated descent, and I'm playing with the mush in the wheel and the stall indicator. And when my heart said, let's pull it back and soften this up, and my head said, my discipline said, do not do that. And I didn't, and it just was interminable, forever it seemed like. I found out later that they get about 5% of these guys back out because they don't have discipline. They stall out, they go in, and they're sealed in that airplane. And then I found out, I heard stories about, we used to tell our paratroopers, when you're going to hit the water, pop out of your chute. These guys were popping out 100 feet up or so and killing themselves. So it's the same, you don't have any depth perception. So it's all the discipline to do this. So then and Horn is saying, don't worry, you're going to skip like a flat rock. There's going to be no problem here. And he's sitting in the back seat. So you don't skip like a flat rock. What happens is if you would imagine yourself in a speedboat going along at, say, 60 miles an hour, and you chop the power, there's that, whatever you call it, the friction, and you'd be thrown right out of that boat, wouldn't you? Well, that's what happens with this airplane, and you just stop with a sudden shock. I burned a half an hour of fuel out of my tanks, high wings tanks, so we're immediately underwater. And so I'm thinking, well, you cool son of a bitch, you really did it. And feeling very proud. And then, of course, the water's pouring in. So then Horn flips the seat forward and gets his feet and pushes that door open and goes out with the packet. And if I was as cool a customer as I thought I would have just waited for the water to come up. You got 40 degrees of flaps down, and I would have just done that. Well, I think I must have tasted some salt water or something, so I started. My only injury that day was hitting the door with my shoulder, which wouldn't give, of course. So my last consciousness was being trapped under that wing, and that's when I drowned. So then Horn apparently had gotten the raft and come around and pulled a lanyard, of which only one half of the 2 hemispheres opened up, I learned. So he comes around and apparently fishes me out somehow and gets me back going again so that I'm conscious. And so now we're in the raft. And some funny things happened. This is how good friends we were. I can remember when we were in the hotel in adjoining rooms, I said, say, you've got one of those beds that you put the coin in and it vibrates. I didn't get one. Can we try? He said, well, this is my room. You got your room. Let's get along here. Well, now we're in the raft, right? And his half is all blown up, and mine, I'm trying to blow up. I'm about to die. And he's sitting there in the sun, and I'm freezing my ass off. And I said, Jimmy, how about trading? He says, that's your end of the raft. I've got my end of the raft. This is a good story. So now we're going along. So finally, but he relents finally and blows on it a while. And we never did inflate our Mae West. So we're going along. And now this Gulf Stream has taken us. And here's Bimini, and so this is going on, and the sun is going to set in the west. And as the day's going on, I say, you know, Jimmy, we're going to die in this fucking raft. He says, well, I'm glad that occurred to you, because he says, there's no airplanes going to be flying where we're going, and no shipping, and you're right. And I said, you know, by the way, my first very exciting, lovely wife got married a week after our divorce to Dr. Mindrup. This gives you some insight into some other problems in my life. So anyway, I said, well, you know, I said, that son of a bitch is going to get everything I own. And Jimmy always had a way of putting things in perspective. He says, well, help me out with this, Lance. He says he's going to get your 33 1/3 RPM records, your tabletop stereo, your portable charcoal, your clothes. Is there anything else he's going to get? Well, I said, I guess it's not so much, is it?